Hi, everyone, and welcome to State of State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel. Play your game. I'm your host, Tom Hannifan. He is Thomas Frank Carr, T. Frank from On3's Blue White Illustrated, my dear friend from our days once upon a time as undergrads at Penn State. We both got our degrees, for the record, so we're very proud of that. Today, we're talking about some of the recent comments made by head coach Matt Campbell, offensive coordinator Taylor Mauser, and several other coaches with media availability this week. It's a little quieter right now than it's been, T. Frank, considering the madness of January, the transfer portal, the 2026 recruiting class. Oh, no, come on, Spell is going to Georgia. A lot of people are sad. But at the same time, there's still a lot to look forward to and a lot to process. Speaking of being sad, how sad should we be that Noah Pauley is not going to be Penn State's wide receiver coach?
Well, it's not good. It's not good to have a plan for 7 weeks and suddenly it's different than what you had expected. I would say that the thing that is important here is like it's after the transfer portal. It's in February before spring practice where you have an opportunity to make a new plan. You need to have a wide receivers coach for spring practice. But for the month of February, it's a dead period in recruiting where you can't go out and visit, so you're not a man down on the recruiting front. But it does obviously not help when it comes to your recruiting momentum. And I don't know all the rules in recruiting. Like, I think you can still have electronic communication with them, like phone calls, video calls, things like that. They just can't visit, and you can't visit them. So there is that aspect of they're going to have to tell the guys that they're recruiting, hey, we have a plan. Here's a couple of names we're thinking about, and then go and you can't take 6 weeks to go find somebody, but the reset, as long as you get the right guy, can be okay. Like you can recover from this, and I think you saw online that I think it was 6 schools all had assistant coaches poached, so Penn State's not in this particular situation alone, but it is absolutely the wide receiver curse at Penn State that the first receivers coach that they get is so good that he gets an NFL job and is the shortest tenured wide receiver coach ever, maybe. Like I remember Jared Parker was here for less than a calendar year. Like he's got a year on his thing, but he got here in February and then left in December. So he didn't even make it a full calendar year. Now it's not even a full 2 months that Noah Pauley was here at Penn State and Happy Valley. So not great, but it is still TBD on how bad it is. And, it's on Matt Campbell is, I'm going to say, first adversity. And that's ignoring all the things you just talked about, right?
It's one of many, yeah.
But like the first major loss, right?
Fair.
So like, here's I guess what I'm thinking. And I know this is a super long answer. I apologize. I filibuster all the time, especially on your show. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, you just seeing your face. I'm
a great listener. Yeah.
Yeah, you really are. We look at the 2026 roster, all the guys they got in the transfer portal, all the guys they brought in, and all the guys they retained, right? And we think this is the roster. And that's not true. It's the roster now. There's going to be attrition between now and September. Guys are going to get injured. They're going to lose guys for the season to injuries. Like, I'm not trying to cast another curse. It's the reality of football. Guys are going to get hurt in practice, especially if you are trying to have real practices that make guys truly better. And so we're just seeing the plan as of now. So this is the first real loss for the 2026 season. That's what I mean in terms of like the first adversity for this particular group. Building the group, I'm sure there was guys they wanted and they didn't get and they couldn't keep. But when it comes to like, okay, the door is closed, everyone's on the boat, right? And now who has gotten scurvy and is now like they're having their salute off into the distance, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now like
for the scurvy.
I've been trying to pull in more insane metaphors lately because they're truly like, like they are a part of who I am that I'm just trying to like, let's workshop a couple of these on air.
It's February. If there's ever a time to workshop stuff, it's now. It's the doldrums of winter with a football program. Let's talk about head coach Matt Campbell getting to speak at length to the media. You know what? I feel for the guy. Considering everything that's gone down in the last couple of months, he was talking about how like he really just got settled with his family and how dispersed he has to have felt, and trying to keep up with this endless treadmill of the transfer portal, the class of 2026 being really, really questionable at first, and trying to salvage that, trying to put together a coaching staff, as we talked about, looking at 2027, looking at 2028, every little last thing. And then he mentioned like, oh yeah, next week we might have some stuff about the blue-white game this coming year. So just like the pile of stuff to do on his desk has to be enormous. But getting that opportunity to introduce yourself, and the media really getting to introduce themselves to Matt Campbell in that capacity earlier on this week, what was your biggest takeaway from hearing Matt speak?
That my name is ridiculous, and it's hard for anyone to know and figure out. It's funny, like a quick story about this. Afterwards, I was leaving the press conference, and there was a group of reporters who were still in the media room working, and they're like, is there going to be a quiz about, like, basically making a joke about how Matt Campbell said he couldn't figure out my name. And I said, yeah, that's what happens when you have two first names and your name is way too long for, and these people who I've known these people for 5-6 years, Hannifan. One of them, Audrey Snyder, we knew in college. Like, we went to college with Audrey as well. Had no idea that my first name is actually Thomas Frank. They thought I was some socially awkward weirdo that was making everyone call me by my middle name. And like, no, that sounds like I'm judging people who do that. And maybe I am a little bit, but like, that's not what's going on here. And these people,
not a John Cougar Mellencamp situation.
No. And this is the thing, is like, I said this to them, is like, if you notice, I never introduce myself to people because we have a 5-minute conversation about what my name actually is. And so like, they just got to know me as T Frank, and they never asked, it was never answered. So after 6 years, people finally actually know what my name is. And it's probably like, this is on me for not actually being more, but like, hey, it's weird, but this is what's going on. Anyway, what Matt Campbell actually said that was interesting from the press conference that I think is notable. Let's just start with the fact that they are going all in on Letterman, history, the legacy of Penn State, and I think there's some lessons learned there via the previous administration. Some of the things they picked up on, obviously Pat Kraft and the institutional memory of Penn State didn't just get erased when James Franklin was fired. And this was absolutely something that I think that it feels organic, it feels real to these people, but it also is something that they are very much leaning into in terms of rebuilding the relationship with the Letterman pre-2012. And I think that's I'm interested to see how that pays dividends or is immaterial. I don't know that it's going to be something that we truly know for a while, but it's something that I think is definitely relevant to the conversation in the history of Penn State over the last 2 decades.
I liked that Campbell came in with just, even when he was hired, just a tremendous amount of humility and appreciation for the opportunity. He continued to talk about toughness, character, and grit, and I think those are 3 hallmarks of what Penn State football's identity has been for a very long time. So hearing those shared values with that nucleus of Iowa State people who came with him is really encouraging. And also the humility to say, I don't know everything, and understanding that he's like, I'm figuring out a lot of stuff. And to your point about the previous administration, and this is not to bag on the previous administration, but after a while, there was a fatigue, it felt like, with the fan base and the media dealing with James Franklin, because it felt like James Franklin was looking down his nose at the media and the fans after a while and acting as if I have all the answers, do not question me. And Matt Campbell, granted, we're in the honeymoon phase. It's super early,
right,
but at least just coming in and showing that humility and just being honest. Like, there's not one thing he said that has felt performative to me, whereas before it felt so robotic and performative to a degree and PR savvy. I feel like you're just getting Matt, and you're getting Taylor, and you're getting Ryan, and you're getting these individuals who are stoked to be here, and they're trying to make the best of what is admittedly a complicated situation.
I disagree. I think he said basically the same stuff that James Franklin has said for years, including thank you for covering Penn State football to start the press conference.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's just different packaging of the same message. This is what I said, like when they hired him, and we've talked about this on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel for a while now. He's saying the same exact stuff that James Franklin is saying. There is no difference from the PR perspective of it. It's just, I think to your point, this is going to sound wrong. He's more of a football coach than James Franklin, who was administrator football coach.
I see that.
And so the tone and the style of delivery, it sounds like he's talking to football players when he's talking to you. And James Franklin can code switch between talking to the media, talking to people when he's trying to get a message across, and when he's talking to football players. Like there's a difference. And like it is the same person, and he's delivering the same message, but in a different way. And Matt Campbell is aesthetically, Matt Campbell speaks like the football coach that Penn State fans want to hear. To me, the more important thing is not about grit and toughness and all those things, because I roll my eyes at that, because the problem is those things are things that every football coach wants. But to me, the decision-making process of what you're willing to sacrifice when you're building a team, this is football. This is why football is fun. It's exciting. It's dynamic. You don't get to have everything. You don't get to have the perfect nose tackle and the perfect corner and the perfect quarterback. You have to make choices about what you're willing to, what you need in a football player position by position. And he said that. And also, like, what are the characteristics of that person that are non-negotiables? And to me, like, I think the second part of that is more important than the first part of that. And I know that that's going to be strong pushback from coaches. Here's my point. If Penn State is going to recruit a defensive tackle from the last 10 years, one thing they were not going to sacrifice was athleticism. They wanted a guy who was 6'4", 6'5", and moved like a defensive end. They tried to find defensive ends and make them into defensive tackles. What they were willing to sacrifice there was overt enormity. Size, strength, power. Matt Campbell is a non-negotiable for him. Quentin Martin, 210-pound, 205-pound running back on the roster. The first thing he says about Quentin Martin is challenging him because he needs to be a 220-pound Big Ten tailback. Something I've been saying for years, by the way, but when the head coach is like, this is a non-negotiable, it becomes more of a conversation. Let me tell you a quick story. Again, to going back to James Franklin also would say these things, and this is something that I saw just anecdotally at a 7-on-7 camp when James Franklin, there's no cameras around, the media's around, but we're not like filming James Franklin. And Corey Smith came up on a golf cart because the players were always around the program. Corey Smith, Penn State running back who transferred out of the program. And I'm not trying to pick on him. This is just the example I have. He was joking with Corey Smith about, like, I'm glad you're on the golf cart because you need to get as many calories as possible. I don't want you burning any extra calories, because he was trying to positively peer pressure his 198-pound running back into being 210 and to be the biggest size possible. For Matt Campbell, like, they are recruiting players that have size. Dan Lynn talked about it. And again, I'm going to say specifically defensive tackle because it's the biggest change, most noticeable difference, is that they are not willing to sacrifice power and strength at certain positions. I asked, I forget who it was. I think it was Derek Hooger. I was talking to him, the GM. He said, Coach Campbell's philosophy is that big people beat small people more often than not in football. And
not
so,
like-
like, you can be tough and gritty and 290 pounds. And, Zane Durant's one of the toughest, grittiest, strongest people per pound that you're going to find in football. But if you're 325 pounds and you're reasonably tough and gritty, probably going to win more of those interactions that they're looking for you to win.
I would categorize Dom DeLuca as tough and gritty. And then I would look at Vega Ioane as physically dominant. And granted, two completely different positions, two different sides of the ball. But I think you kind of understand what I'm driving at there. And it's something I've spoken to Justin King about at length on this show, on and off the air, is his philosophy when it comes to player evaluation recruiting has been just collect big people and then figure it out. Whereas with Franklin, it was let's recruit a frame and then see if we can add to it. And I am thrilled to see the way that they're changing, especially the interior of the defensive line, adding guys that are 320 to 350 pounds just to make that difficult to move. I loved your question to Matt Campbell, and you were trying to figure out, like, hey, what's the defense going to look like? And his response was multiplicity, and that's something that Danton Lynn has done quite a bit of between UCLA and USC. But what did you think of Campbell's response to your question?
So that's basically what I just gave you here, but I'll go into more detail about it, why I think it matters here from the schematic standpoint. And this is something where I don't have an issue with different philosophies and ways to build things and styles, because James Franklin's style, if you get the right players, of, athletic defensive tackles that are strong enough to hold up the run. Like, you can be suffocating. We saw them put together top 10 defenses, right? Like, there's more than one way to be good at football. But if you want to have certain characteristics and identities on a team, and stopping the run, being physical, being dominant in a Big Ten sense, you do, if you want to have big defensive tackles, you do need to have this core that you build around in that sense. They don't have to be elite players, but they need to be good at their specific job. And so the second half of that, and he said, like, some people get wrapped up in what's our identity. And James Franklin had talked about previously that they had recruited to a style of defense and they wanted to honor their word to the players that they are going to play that type of style of defense. And I respect that. But now you've got an opportunity to reset. Everyone in the NFL and in college football wants to be multiple, which means you are blending and blurring the lines between a 4-down front and a 3-down front. And so you need bigger defensive tackles, you need bigger defensive ends, you need bigger linemen to do different things and have versatility of position to position. And so they are baking that into the defense, and I think that'll make you more adaptable and more robust in a bunch of different situations. It's an evolution in football theory and belief. And by the way, I'm a 4-down, wide 9 guy myself. I like that defense. I think sacks are fun. And like, nobody has been better at getting sacks per capita than Penn State over the last 10 years. But at a certain point, like, what are you sacrificing to do that? And are there better ways you can still do that while having more on the front? Especially if you're not going to be getting those 5-star defensive tackle body types. So to me, like, that's the biggest difference. Is it's going to be based in a 4. Like, you have to have a starting home point, right?
Sure.
What's home base? There's still going to be a 4-down front, but they are not afraid of doing anything and everything to put players in position to succeed and different styles of players on the field to create matchups and advantages for the defense. And I think that's going to be, in the long term, a way to maybe recruit some of those elite football players, because it's preparing you for the NFL. And then I guess the thing that I'm curious about, and I'll just say like an open thing that I don't know as much. I've mentioned like what I like in defense. I'm not as familiar with like the responsibilities and the techniques and the scheme overall of a 3-4 defense. To me, what a 3-4 defense means is you have nose tackles and defensive ends that are 2-gapping, meaning they have to take 2 gaps and then everyone else plays around them. I don't think any of these defenses do that anymore. Like, very few defenses actually play like a true version of a 3-4 where you are doing that. Everyone's playing by my interpretation, and I could be wrong about this. Everyone's playing 4-down principles from multiple fronts, and that's why you call it multiple, because it doesn't fit into one category. And so that's the versatility of blending the two things together to create something that is unique and newer and gives you more options. Optionality is the name of the game on defense, so you're not plugged into one look and then allowing the offense to anticipate what you're doing.
Just do the shrug emoji for that defensive front when you print out the playbook. I think that'll help.
Yeah.
State of State is a proud supporter of Blue White Outfitters. Blue White Outfitters was created as a retail shop meant to highlight the confidence, competitiveness, and fearlessness of the elite athletes found throughout the history of Penn State University. Check out their Lockdown U and Lawn Boys merchandise today. All sales from Blue White Outfitters directly benefit Penn State student athletes. Also, official State of State merchandise is available now. Support the show and grab State of State t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Visit www.bluewhiteoutfitters.com today. Looking at the offensive side of the ball, you got to talk to Taylor Mauser, the offensive coordinator. I know you're excited about offensive line coach Ryan Clanton. The concern and the excitement, I think, surrounding Mauser and the offense, I think would be this. One, the excitement is, okay, you feel really good about quarterback. Offensive line, Matt Campbell said he was maybe as excited about offensive line as any other position on the team. Running back looks very, very deep. Tight end looks very strong at this point in time. Wide receiver, to the points we were making before, the jury is still out. So it feels like what you will see offensively this coming year is not going to be a tremendous departure from what we've gotten used to under the James Franklin era, which for some people, there's a comfort. For some people, they're tired of that, but it's going to be 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel, meaning lots of tight ends and running the football. And that's what Penn State's been good at, and that's what this personnel is going to lend itself to. So it's not a coaching staff that's working against that, but there is that modicum of concern when it comes to Taylor Mauser is that he has a little bit of Kodal Nicky in him, and that there's the gadgets and the gimmicks.
Oh, yeah.
And that got real tired Penn State fans, myself included, I was like, if you're good enough to beat somebody and you're bigger, stronger, faster, then you will just line up and beat them and you won't have to do a bunch of smoke and mirrors. So do you think that's a reasonable concern with what Mauser does? Or do you think Penn State fans should be like, hey, this is not going to be the Kotelnicki experience?
No, it's not going to be the Kotelnicki experience.
Thank God.
It's a balanced meal, right? So if everything's a DQ blizzard, if his is a DQ blizzard, this is a steak and potatoes meal with a side of fresh salad and dessert. It's a balanced meal, right?
Lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to give you all your macronutrients. It's going to give you enough protein so that you're building something that you want to be a part of. So they are going to run a lot of tight ends, and they are going to use motions, and they are going to use shifts, but they're not going to make that again, it's like making a side dish the main meal, and instead of like using things to accentuate what you're trying to do. And that to me is kind of the big conversation point of previously those motions and shifts. What the biggest difference, let me illustrate it this way. The biggest difference between the beginning of the season and the second part of the season is that those motions and shifts up front were causing the offensive linemen to be unsure of who they were supposed to block post-snap. Because the point of the motions and shifts is to move the defense and bend them to your will to put them where you want them. The defense has to react to where the offense is lined up. But in that reaction, if your offensive line is not confident about, okay, I got this guy, now I go up to this level, then you're going to make mental mistakes, you're not going to play as fast, and you're going to not have the results that you were expecting based on the talent and the returning experience, right? And so if the defense is moving from their own scheme and your offense is moving them, you are creating too much indecision. So when Terry Smith said, we're going to run the ball, period, it meant we are eliminating that part of the run game. You are going to line up and smash somebody's face in based on old school football principles, and we saw that worked. And so using motion at certain points selectively to give individual looks is one thing. Using it in the passing game is a positive. Using it all the time, everywhere, always is the difference here between Andy Kotelnicki and Taylor Mauser. And the other thing is, to me, if there's a comparison, it is Mike Yurcich and what they wanted to be under Mike Yurcich. Because what they wanted to be under Mike Yurcich was, we're going to take this spread offense from the Big 12 and we're going to add tight ends, run game, and explosive plays out of that. Kirk Shiraka was another guy who did a lot of this stuff of big formations, explosive plays to wide receivers down the field. That's what they want to be. So there is an inherent aggression that is not lateral. And I understand year 2 is different than year 1 from Andy Kotelnicki, where they went much more lateral because they were trying to emphasize the run game, and they did it in a way that, as I just explained, didn't work. This offense wants to attack with the passing game. It's not always, but it is in their DNA. It's baked into all of their passing concepts and the core beliefs of being an attacking downfield style passing game. And so that to me is the biggest difference of you're not going to get a bunch of spread and lateral because the quarterback is built different. He likes to throw the ball down the field. He's more aggressive, and the coordinator is more aggressive, and he's going to use extra tight ends to create attacking of bigger fronts, like we just talked about with defenses pivoting to bigger fronts and more multiplicity. Now you're trying to get those matchups there while supplementing that with explosive receiver passing attack, and that's where the receivers are very important here, because if that doesn't work, then you do have kind of a version of what we've seen over the last 5 years of you just have a death by 1,000 cuts offense.
Your conversation with Mauser, getting to speak with him a little bit earlier on this week, and your general feelings on Ryan Clanton. How do you feel about those beer-chugging members of this coaching staff? Who I personally already, after the hockey game this past weekend, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Mauser and Clanton.
Yeah, I had to give up chugging beer a couple years ago for personal reasons.
Right.
I'm not an alcoholic or anything, but that's relatable. That's much more relatable, right, to where I am in life than some other people. What's that?
You have a gluten allergy, am I correct? Or
yeah, I'm also a diabetic now, so I probably had too many of them early in my life in my 20s, and I used up all my insulin. So doesn't mean I don't have a good time still, but you got to make some choices.
Fair.
Anyway, I think that's a part of this is like they're young and hungry offensive staff, guys that are going to be relatable recruits, and they are going to be willing to. They don't have an established dogma of what they believe in. They're much more willing to innovate and follow trends in the NFL. And like this offense is going to be on the trend of what's happening in the NFL right now. The ideas that are coming into vogue in the NFL, they are following in parallel on the college level to a lot of those. And you mentioned. Matt Campbell saying that he's very excited about the offensive line. This is the most talented offensive line they've ever had. Taylor Mauser said, like, we weren't getting guys that look like Malachi Goodman. And that's fair. And he said to nobody's fault being, again, where you are, who you are, what logo is on your shirt when you go into a high school. Like, they were not able to get guys like that. I think Ryan Clanton, from a production standpoint, though, what he did with the resources he had, they had good offensive lines that, again, executed, aggressive. They understood their assignments. They didn't make a ton of mental mistakes, and they were physically attacking the defense. Now you add water, right? You add one of the things that we talked about with Taylor Mauser is I asked him about the offensive line, and he's like, yeah, Anthony Donko, like, you don't see circus bears like that very often. And the person that he is better than the athlete, and that's saying something. And then he said, trying to get to know Cooper Cousins in the first week of just trying to get an idea of, like, what do you like? What do you do for fun? And his questions were, hey, what's your favorite run scheme? Like the dude eats nails for breakfast sort of guy. And so they have these things that can unlock something that they want to do, maybe that they couldn't do before. The other side of that, obviously, is they're in the Big Ten. And so the level of competition in the trenches especially is going to go up. And Penn State, as talented as their offensive line is, it is young. It is unproven in a lot of different ways. Trevor Burr wasn't a full-time starter last year for them, although he's played the last 2 years. So Anthony Donko is their one player with extensive starting experience coming back. So it's a lot of youth and potential, but I think they're right to be optimistic about this group. And I think I don't know the way that Ryan Clanton coaches, but the product, the end result, I've been very impressed with. I think at times they were a little bit more cohesive of a unit than Penn State had even under Phil Trautwein, who was a very good coach. But I think what we explained with the offense, maybe some of that was mitigated by the ecosystem they were in. That's not going to be the case. So I think you have an opportunity for this offensive line to come out strong. Again, I said that last year. We'll find out.
Right. I'm excited to see the competition along the offensive line. Obviously, the guys returning for Penn State, but guys like Trevor Burr from Iowa State, guys like Brock Reicher from Texas State, who played quite a bit last season. Would he immediately play at center as he did for the Bobcats?
Can I tell you a crazy story? I was talking to Ryan Clanton about him. So he was listed at 285 on the Texas State roster. And we had a big hullabaloo over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com on the message board because I said, he is underpowered for a center. And somebody from Texas State, who I think knew him personally, was very upset that I called him severely underpowered because you watch him and he's doing everything right, but he's not really making an impact, kind of bouncing off of linemen. But every once in a while, he'd get under a guy's elbow or under their armpit and throw him. He was playing at 275 last year.
Ooh.
Starting offensive lineman playing at 275. So, the ability for him to grow and to get better, and it's impressive. I don't know if it's this year, but Clanton was very high on Brock Reicher as a football player in the long view. I just thought it was crazy because it's 10 pounds lighter than you thought, and he was still performing at that specific level.
Yeah, even at the Big Ten level, another 20 is really where you maybe like him, and another 30 was where you would feel really comfortable. So I'm curious to see what that competition looks like. A couple more questions here in terms of coaches that you got to speak to in this past week. Any other comments or remarks that jumped out to you?
Yeah, I liked talking to Akaka Malloy, the defensive tackles coach. He's the defensive line coach, but they're going to have two separate guys to coach the edges and the interior players. But what he was talking about, and this goes back to our conversation about the defense, they are going to put guys in position to get the fish of the week, is what he called it, where they're going to identify the weakest link on the offensive line and put their best pass rusher in a situation to beat that guy. So Laiatu Latu is the template here. And some of the guys that he highlighted in that were Ivan Kamaju, Max Granville, and LeVar Arrington, who played linebacker last year. And I have been talking about this for a while now, on and off, because I don't think he's going to be a starter. He's not going to be somebody who is going to take over Caleb Bacon's position as the hybrid player between the linebacker and defensive end room, but he is the future of it. And it's funny because it's back to the future. He's going to be playing the exact position his dad did. He's going to be in coverage on certain plays. He's going to rush the passer on certain plays. He's going to be at the height of his abilities. He is going to be a chaos factor for Penn State defense, creating these unpredictable fronts and pressure packages for Penn State. And it's going to be a very interesting thing to watch and see how he does it. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get some highlights of his dad and just use that as the template of like, hey, by the way, this is what we're talking about with Penn State and some of the things they want to do. So it's going to be very interesting. I think fans are going to be very happy to hear some of those things because you're literally getting LeVar 2.0 in this defense, how they, at least in my interpretation, of how they're going to use him. Yeah.
Conceptually.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see if he's able to clean jump over the center and tackle a quarterback or running back. To compare him to his father athletically, production-wise, jury's still out.
He's got to get a little bit more neck meat. He's got I know there's the 90s versus now and everyone's more about functional mobility, but I mean, his dad was a unit, right? And so LeVar has all the frame in the world, but he's got to start, doing some shoulder shrugs and put on the neck roll. Then he's going to be able to do some of those things. I think you get like a +5, like a Madden +5 rating when you have the big shoulder pads and the neck roll at Penn State.
I love it, especially in the EA college football game, like the old school neck rolls. Like they don't have the modern ones where it's like they have the little like cowboy collar or something like that. Yeah. But the old school ones, I'm like, I love that. Speaking of +5, I believe the Patriots are +4.5, 4.5 as underdogs in the Super Bowl.
You really want me to talk about this?
The Buffalo Bills are not participating in this year's Super Bowl. It's the
really? Oh, really? I had no idea.
Patriots, according to our friends at FanDuel, the Seahawks are favored by 4.5 this Sunday in the San Francisco Bay Area. So as you weep into your Josh Allen jersey, for the game.
So this is where I'm going to take off all my analyst hat and just take the mask off and be fully insane fan. Join the ranks of you who don't care about the analysis.
Vent.
I am cursed as a football fan. What I want to happen does not happen. The opposite happens. So I think conceptually the Seahawks are a better team. I think their defense is great. Their offense has balance. Sam Darnold is a veteran quarterback. Drake May has been okay in the playoffs, but we've seen the Ben Roethlisbergers and the Aaron Rodgers of the world be young quarterbacks, Tom Brady going back in the day, with a good defense and a good coaching staff and a good overall team ability, go and win the Super Bowl with a young quarterback. And they've got enough weapons to do it. So it is fate that they're going to win because I don't want them to by rooting against them. So go Seahawks. I don't know what's it's not go Birds. That's because that's the Eagles. What's go Hawks?
I don't know what their
don't have a good one
cry is. So
go Green.
You can be a part of the 12th man. There you go. Yeah.
Part of the 12s, I think is what they call it. The 12s, which is, it doesn't roll off the tongue. They don't have good marketing. They need better marketing. Great team. I've loved John Schneider as a GM. I think he's one of the best behind Howie Roseman for your Eagles. To be able to be back here is really impressive the way they've built that. Mike McDonald is the kind of defensive coach you want to have in the NFL. And I think they are the worthy favorite in this game. And so I'm just hoping for chalk. Even though, here's the other thing. I'm sorry. I know we're going long.
Go for it.
The other thing is like early in the career, once Josh Allen was good, right? I always have the conversation in my head about legacy, right? So you want him to beat Mahomes, and you don't want Mahomes to get more Super Bowls because at the end of their career, who's the greatest quarterback of all time? Who's going to supplant Brady if that's possible? And like Mahomes he's on lap 3 and Josh Allen is on the quarter turn. Now Sam Darnold from the same class who got drafted above Josh Allen is in the Super Bowl before Josh Allen. So we're having a real conflict of legacy. But here's the thing. I'll take anything at this point. I'll take getting there at this point. Legacy be damned. And like, oh no, Joe Burrow made it to the Super Bowl before Josh Allen. I just need them to get there once. And that's fine. But now I think it's just him and Baker Mayfield. Has Lamar been to the Super Bowl? I don't think Lamar's been to the Super Bowl.
No, Lamar's made an AFC title game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, against the Bills.
No,
not against. No, not against the Bills. Never mind.
I'll say this. In the words of Matt Campbell, it's a team sport. So I always come back to that. It's not a quarterback sport. It's a team sport. And two, in the words of Mike Tyson, who gives a shit about legacy? We're all going to die. So,
but it's the only thing that lasts after you're gone.
That's why you and I do this, is that, when we're dead and gone, your wife can pull up the On3 Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel where there's some fantastic content and just see her husband emoting. And then for me, people can watch me freaking out about professional wrestling for years to come, wherever they get their wrestling. So
you ever wonder what's going to happen to like the defunct parts of the internet? You ever wonder about that? Like, how is all of this going to be chronicled? Is this gonna last 100? Like, what's the end of the internet? Sorry, I had a very philosophical.
This is a whole other podcast.
It's the off season, man. I've had some time to think.
This is an existential crisis more than anything. Conversation. Yeah, I'm. Listen, shut it all down. I'm looking forward to the end of the world. Valhalla. Let's see how it goes. He is Thomas Frank Carr. Check out all of the stuff that he does, because he does a ton for On3's Blue White Illustrated. He is their workhorse. T. Frank, I love you to pieces. Thank you for coming on. I'm Tom Hannifan. Thank you for joining us here on State of State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by FanDuel.